Welcome into Heartland College Sports. I'm Pete Mundo. We are always excited to welcome on various guests onto the program, onto the show, whether you're taking us through YouTube, through our podcast, through our radio show, all different platforms. We appreciate you being here and really appreciate the time of Travis Goff, the athletic director, of course, for the Kansas Jayhawks, joining us on Heartland College Sports. Travis, thanks for being here.
Appreciate it, Pete. Thanks for the invite and looking forward to the discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we have a lot to talk about with what you guys have going on there at KU. You've got a ton of renovations going on, football, basketball, two programs that find themselves on the upswing right now. Before we get to that, of course, we cover the Big 12, and there's a lot going on there on that front. So let's just start off. You come in as AD in 2021, and at the similar time, the Big 12 is turning over. Bob Bowlesby is heading out. Brett Yormark is coming in. So you and Brett Yormark, in many ways, he's really the only Big 12 commissioner that you know. How do you go through this process of getting to know him? And then, of course, what's your relationship been like and his leadership as the Big 12 commissioner the last nearly 2 years now?
Yeah, I mean, I think, rewinding back 2 years ago, I'm just kind of getting unpacked. And we know that summer, right out of the gates, the OU and Texas release breaks, right? They're exiting the SEC with Commissioner Bowlesby in his role at the forefront. It certainly was a daunting time for the Big 12. It was a concerning time for the Big 12 in terms of stability and viability. But credit to Commissioner Bowlesby at that juncture to act with, I think, strength and act with decisiveness and got the board together, the presidents, the chancellors, the ADs, and went out and identified what we believe firmly were the best four, and still even to this day today, the best four to add to the conference. And that gave a bunch of stability to the league. It gave direction, kind of looking ahead. And then, of course, with Bob's imminent retirement, they went out and did a search, and our chancellor here at KU, Doug Girard, was one of the key cogs in landing Brett Yormark, and he's just been tremendous for the league. We were in Big 12 meetings in West Virginia just, I don't know if it was last week or the week before, and we shook our heads when it was reminded that he's only been with us for 9 or 10 months.
Yeah.
It feels like it's 2 years of him driving and pushing the conference forward, and that's a testament to his ambition. That's a testament for his motor. It's a testament to his creative lens and marketing mindset, because we just have exceptional confidence in where the league is going. I think the way in which we're unified is really has been strengthened. I think the new four that have come on board and been part of our meetings really for the year have been very additive in terms of leadership and perspective. And I think we're all bullish on the Big 12.
Well, I do, and I know people are going to call me out on it, so I do stand corrected. It really has only been not even a year. It feels like it's been two with Yormark, but it's only been one. When you think about the accomplishments of the last 9-10 months, the new TV contract, beating the Pac-12 to market on that front, you've got basketball that's going to be doing things in Rucker Park. You've got bowl games being played in Mexico. How much of this vision of Brett Yormark's did you see coming? Was that part of the appeal of Brett Yormark based on those involved in the conversation, or was in many ways has he even exceeded some of the expectations y'all had?
Yeah, I mean, I think not many of us, if any of us, knew who he was necessarily in terms of his backdrop or had ever really crossed paths with him with his history. So that was unique. But I remember talking to Chancellor Girard and him giving me some inside baseball after the hiring of the committee, asking the finalists to come back and be prepared to talk about two big ideas for the conference, right? Give us two or three big ideas. And when it was Brett's session in that interview, Chancellor Girard told me that Brett came back with like 15 big ideas. And so he had told me that early when Brett was just getting started. And that's the way it's played out. I mean, Brett is constantly looking at ways to differentiate the Big 12 in a crowded environment, in a very competitive environment. He's looking at ways to think, progressively, aggressively, out of the box. And boy, again, in just 9 to 10 months, it's pretty remarkable. getting out in front of that TV deal and then executing it. I mean, I think it's one thing to say we're going to enter the market early. It's another thing to execute it and really maximize the opportunity at that moment in time. Big 12, Mexico's another great example, as you kind of referenced last week with that announcement. It certainly was one that we had to really have good conversations around. We had to get educated around the whys, the strategy, all the intricacies of that. But the way Brett operates is he brings us together. We have those discussions. We get to ask questions. We get to lob concerns when and where those exist, and we're all excited about that. Kansas is going to be with Houston, the first teams to compete in Mexico City in December of 24. I think it's a great opportunity for our student athletes, great opportunity to expand the Big 12 brand. And, specifically for KU, it's an important market down there.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, of course, this kind of weaves in, and you mentioned the spring meetings you guys had a couple of weeks back into where we are right now. We're kind of in this holding pattern, it seems like. If something's going to happen on expansion, realignment, the next 2, 3, 4 weeks seem like a prime time for something like that to happen. And there appears to be, and you tell me if I'm wrong here, Travis, but it looks like, we all know the Pac-12 schools that may be in the conversation, but there's also a push and pull on, do you look at what we would call basketball first schools in UConn or basketball only schools in Gonzaga as, a blue blood in college basketball, as the preeminent basketball program in this conference? How do you see the value of a school that is perceived to be basketball first or basketball only versus, say, a school that's a traditional Power 5 but may not have the branding or the quality hoops of, say, a Gonzaga or a UConn?
I think the good news, Pete, is I won't be able to tell you whether you're right or wrong, because I don't think there's anybody out there who knows what's what in the conference realignment discussion or sweepstakes. And I think we've all learned that, when you think something may or may not be about to drop or imminent, recognizing that there's so many variables at play, and not assuming anything is again imminent or right on the cusp, and certainly not believing all that we might see or read in social media. I would just say this. I just give, again, credit to Commissioner Yormark, credit to our conference leadership, presidents and chancellors, just to be thoughtful and to kind of really seek optionality. That's been a phrase that Brett, I think, is leaned into, and I think it's all been received well. It's to say, in this day and age when college athletics is so dynamic, there's so many unknowns, there's so many uncontrollables. One thing that we can do, that we can maximize potential and ownership of, is to make sure we are maximizing optionality and considering a variety of different perspectives. And so that's the way I think the league has handled it, and knowing that not all of it is in certainly anyone's control, is being open-minded and pondering a whole variety of different scenarios. So I think, again, just alignment with where the league has a chance to go, confidence in that direction, and being prepared for a whole variety of things has been the approach. And I think we're effectively prepared for that.
Does more travel, from a standpoint of being the AD, Travis, does more travel, what that does to the budget, does that scare you, concern you at all? Or is that kind of overblown things that maybe we overanalyze in the media because that's what we do, but it's not something that when you're looking at the bottom line and you're looking at what's more valuable than something else, you're not as concerned about?
Well, I mean, I think it's a little bit of both. I think we have, when you think about travel, to me, it's less around expense, although that's a factor, that's important. Mm-hmm. It's more about student athlete well-being, wellness. It's more about, the academic calendars and dynamics of additional days of travel, later arrivals back to campus, earlier departures to get to, further out destinations. So I think that's really the bigger variable in analyzing the travel dynamic in this broader footprint that I think, we know the Big Ten is embraced. We know the Big 12, now that you go Provo all the way to Orlando, a much more significant swath of the country. And so I think it is making sure we're attentive to that, making sure we're having discussions, making sure there's a scheduling model that can create a little bit of balance, in putting our student athlete experience at the forefront. But then on the other side of that coin is going, hey, it's 2023. It's a new world of intercollegiate athletics. We have to embrace, the growth, this idea of expansion, of footprint. Geography still matters, but it isn't the only thing that matters. And I think it's the combination of things that I think gets you in the right place.
Yeah, very interesting. Travis Goff is joining us, of course, Kansas Athletic Director. If you're on the podcast, if you're on YouTube, as always, we appreciate you hitting that subscribe button. And we're always grateful for our radio audience as well, which this show airs on multiple radio stations across the entire Midwest. So, Travis, let's get into the micro here. What's happening at KU? Specifically, I want to start with football because you come in and let's be honest, things are pretty hairy. And then you make this hire in Lance Leipold. It's an awkward time of year to hire a football coach in the spring. People in this part of the world don't really know Lance Leipold. They see the resume, but they say, will it work? They've been let down before. 2 years in, I can't imagine you could have predicted this. But what was the moment as you're going through this process and your first big AD job? Of course, you were deputy AD at Northwestern. What is the moment that you say to yourself, this is my guy?
I think you certainly believe that when you're getting to the outcome in a search. I think that's one of the sort of the litmus test is to say, well, is this our guy? Do you have that confidence when you're making that decision, when you feel like you've got a great pool and multiple options that fit, that the question of, is this our guy? Meaning, is this the University of Kansas's ideal fit for in general, from a value system perspective, from a fit perspective, but in particular at this need and moment of time. I felt that from the moment we went down that path with Lance. And then, the difficult part, it was an advantage, frankly, to be doing a search in April because he had the attention of the market. You weren't competing with a bunch of other great openings out there like you typically are in the December cycle, so to speak. So that ended up being an advantage. The disadvantage, of course, was Lance and the staff show up in May and they have no spring ball. They don't know the roster. The roster is, fragile, certainly, to say the least. Mm-hmm. And they got to start this thing in August, right? And so that's the challenging part. When was it reaffirmed? Well, it was reaffirmed every day, I think, in terms of the culture building process, the buy-in they were getting early and often from the guys. And then it started to show up in the way that group in their first year, which we only won 2 games, but in that first year, those guys fought till the end. And they hung in there and they battled and they were competitive and they'd come back and go back to work at practice. And I think those were early indicators. But, I think you kind of alluded to this, Pete. They're 25 months in to their time here in Lawrence. A year ago, we're coming off a 2-10. The first time when they arrived 2 years ago, they were coming off a 0-win season. So the reality is Lance and the staff have us way ahead of what anyone's even most optimistic, ambitious forecast would have had it. And we had our second great spring session, and the recruiting momentum is really high. They've handled the portal well, and they've got this Jayhawk community and fan base incredibly excited. And our momentum, it's real. I mean, I don't want to go overboard here, but the momentum around football at the University of Kansas is very real, and it's different than it's been in a long, long time.
I got to ask, I was thinking about that first year, 2021. Obviously, everyone thinks of the Texas win, but the Oklahoma game, I mean, it well. I mean, you guys almost pull it off. But as I recall, and maybe this story's been told, if so, I don't know it, you guys opened up the stadium to basically anybody in the second half, right? Is Travis Goff making that call to say basically open the floodgates to anybody in Lawrence? Or how did that decision come to be? Was that a halftime decision? What's the story there?
I think, I'll never forget it. It's really a fun memory to look back on because it was that kind of moment where you got a group of guys that are fighting so hard. They're competing so well. The crowd that was there, which was a fine crowd. It wasn't a great crowd, but, we hadn't deserved a great crowd at that particular moment in time, was given everything they had. And literally you're standing there on the sideline watching this thing. And I looked over and did a sort of a 360 on the stands. And I said, you know what? If we can pull this thing off, there's going to be thousands of people that regretted not being here. And most of them are at home watching it going, I can't believe I didn't go to that game. I'm going to miss this opportunity. So
Yeah.
we said, how do we change that? Well, let's get on social media, open the gates, no ticket required. I think that was halftime, Pete. It might have been early third quarter. And that was the decision we made. It probably wasn't the best decision in a variety of ways, right? And I won't say what those ways were, but we don't regret it because honestly, it was one of those statements that says this administration, this leadership is going to do everything it can and then some to support this program. We didn't end up winning the game, but the group that came in, of which was certainly a few thousand people that came in that second half, entered the stadium, got to see a team fight to the finish against a blue blood in Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. And I think that's just one of many small but important moments when you're trying to build a program from the ground up.
The college game day experience last year, I mean, you guys have done a million of those on the basketball side. Football, it's just it's a different beast. KU did a great job with it last year against TCU. That moment, to me, was kind of a welcome back moment in many ways for Kansas, even though the game didn't go as planned necessarily. So that experience, was that a moment for you last year when you said, wow, this really is kind of building into something even faster than we expected? Or was there another moment last year you thought of?
Oh, there were more than a few moments. The mm-hmm. first sellout last fall, early at 3-0 was one of those moments. Certainly game day was an incredible moment. And I think, the realization is you can know that all the right things are happening in building the program in the right manner. But unless there are tangible indicators, you also know that the broader community isn't seeing it and feeling it. And so reality is society requires tangible demonstrations. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have them, this stuff's a lot harder, whether it be sport, whether it be in other aspects of life. And, the first sellout was one of those, obviously 5-0 and then getting game day to commit to come to Lawrence and being that morning right here in Lawrence, Kansas, and frankly, the epicenter of college football in week 6, that's pretty special. And I know what it did for the program and the young men. I know what it did for Lance and the staff. I know what it did for recruiting. But, hey, how about what it did to awaken and remind an entire fan base, an entire community, an entire region, quite frankly, that this can be done. This can mm-hmm. be done, and we should expect it, and we should all go in and do what we can to make sure that's exactly what we had. And so I think that in that regard, it was absolutely a catalyst.
Well, you got Lance. You guys did an extension with him here this offseason. I know there's a contingency there around making sure the stadium upgrades are done. It seems like you guys are well on your way on that front. How when people ask you, fans, they say to you, hey, Travis, how confident are you this is our guy for the long term? What do you say to them? How confident are you in Lance and the new extension and the future of him leading KU football?
Well, I mean, I think it takes a multitude of variables and factors. I think right out of the gates, Lance, Kelly, their kids, their family really embraced Lawrence, embraced KU, and that's only been, I think, further ingrained. I mean, they love the place, they love the people, they love the institution. They're so engaged and committed around Lawrence that I think that's a really important thing. They're getting roots in the ground here. So yeah, absolutely, that matters, and it's not foolproof by any means. So then, other things that are important. Number 2 would be, does his staff believe they can reach a really high, ambitious bar for what success could be at KU? And that can only be demonstrated if we're supporting it at the highest level. So the contract extension, the magnitude of that investment, not just in Lance, but also in his entire coaching staff and the support staff around that program, doing it in a way that demonstrates longevity. The facility front, absolutely critical, desperately needed, not just talk, but real movement right away and ahead of schedule. And then last, I think we're in our environment right now, you got to be talking about name, image, and likeness. You got to be talking about, the young men in this particular discussion deserve those opportunities. They've helped elevate an entire institution through their work, their commitment, their buy-in. And so they certainly richly deserve the opportunities NIL presents them. And so what are we doing to give them a foundation to work from? What are we doing to help maximize that? And I think the totality of that says that KU is not missing on this moment for football. And this is going to be one of the great stories, and we think modern college football builds right here in Lawrence, Kansas.
Well, let's wrap it up the last couple of minutes with some hoops. Start off with Allen Fieldhouse, the renovations. You know, no one needs to tell you, Travis, you're a Dodge City kid. You graduated there. You know the importance of that building, the value, the history of that building as well as any. I've had the opportunity to be there a couple of times. How are you guys going to do this where, you know, you have these upgrades, which we understand every older building needs, but not lose what makes Allen Fieldhouse Allen Fieldhouse?
Yeah, the assignment, Pete, has simply been don't screw it up.
Famous last words.
That's like the sticky note on my desk. Allen Fieldhouse, don't screw it up.
Oof.
And you know, the good news is we don't have to do a lot to change the experience once you're in your seat. Once you're in your seat, I think it's the best venue in sport, period, in the world. You got 16,000 of your best friends. You've got an incredible product on the court. You've got history and tradition that's resonating throughout that building. So that's a home run, no question. It's all about the other elements of what fan experience has to be: the concourses, the restrooms, the concessions, the parking, ingress, egress, hospitality spaces. And that's really at the forefront of this project. And even in modernizing those spaces, we're going to make sure that we're paying tribute to history, character, tradition. And I'm excited about it. And I really think a vast majority of our people will appreciate the outcomes of that. I'm sure we'll miss the mark for a handful, but I really think we're going to get it right. Our architects have been tremendous. $50 million project. They're well into phase one. It'll all be completed as we get into the 24-25 season in just a short 15 months. And speaking back to the broader, you know, football project, you know, we've said we have to move both those projects forward, and that's precisely what's happening here at KU. Our fans, our donors are responding in an incredible way, and in reasonably short order, we're going to have both Allen well on its way and this football project. We think trending to having two of the greatest facilities and combinations in college sports.
Well, on the hoop side, of course, we know the season didn't end the way any KU fan wanted it to. Thankfully, Coach Self is okay. It doesn't seem like he is slowed down for the long term at all. But what have these conversations been like between you and him here in recent weeks that you can share when it comes to the way the sport has changed? You know, we've seen younger coaches, Jay Wright comes to mind, step away maybe earlier than people would have expected, possibly with the tie-in to how NIL, transfer portal, everything else has changed the sport so dramatically. How do you feel like the longevity of Coach Self is when it comes to the sport, when it comes to the way it's changing, and, you know, the future of maintaining KU basketball's excellence?
Yeah, I think really important part of what's happening here has been certainly the health challenges that Bill had. He feels better than he has in a long time. He's more invigorated than I think he's been. I don't know if I could say ever. I haven't been around him forever, but at the highest level, he's more committed to KU than I think he's been, and that's been at a really high level. And I think he's more excited and motivated than ever before, and that's saying a lot about a guy who I think is certainly the best coach in college basketball. And, you know, he's really embraced this new era. He's embraced this idea that, you know what, you can still continue to bring in young guys and develop and mentor and maximize their ceiling, but you can also complement via the transfer portal. You can provide, you know, all the experiences that have long been at the core of Kansas basketball that are unrivaled. And then you can also provide incredible NIL opportunities, because that's what this fan base, how much it believes in and how much it loves its basketball and its program. So he's thriving in this new environment. I think our future is brighter than ever, because I think Bill's going to be at the helm for a good chunk of time, and doing it in a manner that he feels better, and in a manner that he really has embraced this new sort of chapter of college basketball and college athletics. So I couldn't feel better about where we're heading in the sport of men's basketball at KU either.
Well, that's fantastic. He is Travis Goff, Kansas's athletic director, joining us on Heartland College Sports. I'm Pete Mundo. As always, however you're grabbing the show, YouTube, podcast, whatever it might be, we always appreciate you sharing it, subscribing it, the whole deal. And, of course, our radio listeners as well, always grateful for everything that you guys do, tuning in to this show each and every week on whatever radio affiliate you're in Oklahoma, Texas, Kansas, and Missouri as well. Travis, we appreciate it. Really appreciate your time. Grateful for it. And we'll be talking to you soon.
Thanks, Pete. Appreciate your coverage, man. Have a great day. Rock chalk.